you all have been here for a while, sitting here for a while in this room, and I don't want to keep you much longer. I'm going to primarily talk about some reflections on experience with Dr. Pannell. Go figure. Yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to do. Tell some stories about time with him. But as I do that, I want to begin by working with, give you an understanding of what I'm working with when I say racism. We've had that conversation here a little bit today, but when I talk about racism and white supremacy, I'm not talking about something that's fundamentally different. Whiteness, white supremacy, racism, from my understanding, are all interwoven, interconnected. Number of very good theorists recognize that the process of creating white in the Western world is an act of violence against people of color. That racism is the construct of a way of understanding human being, from botanists, anthropologists, naturalists, and so forth, who in the process of organizing all life in the world also organized human beings. The definition of human beings to correspond with the effort to create systems and structures for whites only. White is a political marker. It's not just a skin color. It distributes goods and services and privileges for a certain segment of people classified as human and others as non-human, to describe why they can be possessions. And religion was one of the engines to mobilize this effort. So I want to say that just at the onset, at the beginning of that, it was, I think that was a little convoluted in our conversation. It's a very important conversation to have. It's very deep and complex, and I think our conversation here demonstrates that it is complex. Yes, it is. It's complex. So, just to say that, as I begin talking about Dr. Panell, it's very important, my interaction with him. I cannot remember when it was that I met Dr. Panell. It feels as if he's always been an influence in my life, in some way or another. I know that's not true. I've not always known him. But I can't recall when I met him, seriously. My first real memories of Dr. Panell begin around 2002, when I was working at my undergraduate alma mater, Westmont College, and was a master's student here at Fuller. In my memory, I was having conversation with someone about him. In that conversation, Dr. Panell was not a mere mortal. In evangelical academic environments like Westmont and Fuller, Dr. Panell was a force. Mentioning his name, Panell, was to invoke power. Figuratively, if you didn't know Panell, especially as an African American in an evangelical community, you didn't have power in those communities. Panell was a power that helped to keep me in my right mind and to navigate psychologically hostile environments with clarity and insight on my journey in the Theological Academy. I went on to complete a PhD here at Fuller. I was a student of the theological ethicist of justice, Dr. Glenn Stassen, a man whom I love like a father. But if it weren't for people like Bill Panell, I may never have met Glenn. I was a theology major in college before coming to Fuller as a master's student. In the entirety of my theological education, I had only one African-American professor, Dr. J. Alfred Smith. That's significant, because in the classroom, the professor represents expertise, authority, a kind of power. Given the fact that professors are mere mortals, we speak from our context, no matter what we tell our students. We assign what we're familiar with or what we want to become familiar with. Someone said, if you don't know a subject, teach it. And context limits us. When I was an undergrad and a master's student in white evangelical environments, that reality often translated the reality of teaching from context. That reality often translated into Jim Crow-type syllabi, with required reading that was authored by whites only. The whites-only impression of the academy was shredded for me in my PhD program, but during the years of my master's program, Dr. Panell was the source that guarded my mental and spiritual well-being in that onslaught of intellectual violence, and helped me appropriate Christian voices and perspectives that were not included on required reading lists as I completed my coursework. I called him a lot, and I visited him at his home. I saw that Panell, the powerful force, was a family man who modeled what it means to be a devoted husband. We saw that last night. Loving father and adoring grandfather. He's crazy for his grandkids. You don't get time with Panell if his grandkids are around. In a theological environment that has historically been hostile towards people of color, Panell does his work with dignity and meaning, keeping his sense of his full humanity intact. I know how he did it, because I heard the prophetic insight in our frequent conversations. In one particular phone conversation we had years ago, we were discussing a final paper that I was writing for one of my master's level courses. I planned on making this thing great. It was going to sing. This paper was going to be bad. I called James Cone at Union in New York to get his insights on what I was crafting. Today, Cone is a friend of mine and an ally, but then I was just a nuisance student calling him out of the blue to talk about something he hadn't written about. He didn't engage me or my thoughts at that time, but Panell did. And for my money, Panell's voice was equally substantial. I don't remember what I was writing about for that paper, but I do remember yeah, that's about how bad it was. I don't remember what I was writing about in that paper. But I do remember the power of Panell's words during that conversation. I remember that conversation. He said to me, some white Christians wrap their Bible in a flag and turn the Word of God into political propaganda for causes that have nothing to do with the gospel of Jesus Christ. The Word of God from their mouths is not prophetic, it's complicit in abuse and is in fact an offense to the way of Jesus. He said that Christianity crafts a Jesus in their own image and demands that everyone worship him. So it's not enough to say that we need more Bible and more Jesus. We need the ability to hear the Word of God and the eyes to see Jesus through the noise and clutter that dehumanizes people in the name of the gospel. That gospel is not the real gospel. It's not Christianity, it's idolatry. Whatever I was writing about couldn't contain the power of that prophetic insight. I just held it in my memory and have continued to use it as I navigate the academy, often diagnosing that very problem of the flag-wrapped Christian message. Evangelical has been complicit, is complicit in the flag-wrapped Christian message. Panell's powerful insight is one that helps to navigate a problem that many black church Christians have often had with that version of the gospel from large numbers of white evangelicals. To accept that message is to capitulate to a white supremacist status quo. When we sing, "You can have all this world, but give me Jesus," without the sort of insight that Panell offers, we turn Jesus into a kind of psycho-spiritual sedative, numbing us to the torture of our minds and bodies by racism that contorts and distorts humanity. What about a little bit of Jesus right here in this world? But Panell has not been numb or sedate. He was the first African-American professor hired at Fuller and the first African-American trustee. I think it's no coincidence, by the way, that he's also a member of Scott United Methodist Church here in Pasadena. I had the great privilege of preaching at his church on January 18, 2009, during the weekend we celebrated MLK, the MLK holiday, and the impending inauguration of the nation's first African-American president, called Ethics Sunday. And I was the one preaching at that historical moment. Wish the sermon was good. I'd like to say it was good. That's all I can say about that. He recommended me as a speaker to his pastor. In the choir's stand on that Sunday was a long-standing member of the church who'd been there with her family all of her life. She was the sister of Jackie Robinson. And Scott United is the home church of the Robinson family. Scott United Methodist was also the home church of Jackie Robinson. Like Jackie Robinson, who broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball, becoming the first African-American to play in the major leagues, taking the heat, maintaining a strong sense of himself, and excelling. Jackie Robinson pushed the door of professional basketball open for America to see humanity and the abilities of people of color. Whether you liked baseball or not, while Jackie Robinson was doing his thing, you were impressed, and you may be a baseball fan, if only for those game times. The same can be said for Dr. Pannell. The power of Dr. Pannell is in fact, in the reality that he demonstrated what it is to be human in spaces that have historically denied the humanity of people of color. Dr. Pannell has been a humanizing force in this space of theological learning. If he were here, I think he's probably gotten tired of our long day of speaking. He apologizes. I would say to him, thank you for your work, Dr. Pannell. If you didn't say yes to God years ago, I just don't know where I would be.